they'll see your cute baby. Say hi, Amina.
Okay. The Encyclopedia Britannica states that 1/2 of all produced rubber is used for tires, to make tires. But I'm not going to be talking about that, I'm going to be talking about hoses. I work at a place that makes 60,000 hoses a day, and I personally make 5 miles of hose, depending on the day. Hoses are everywhere. I know probably the main thing people would think about when they think about hoses are radiator hoses off of your car. But they use hoses for a lot of different things. We make hoses for washing machine parts. Another big seller is turbos. They make hoses for turbo engines, for big diesels and things like that. I've also seen some really weird all rubber hoses that they use for exhaust on different things. I've been making hoses for 5 years. I've done probably every part of the process that there is at different lengths of time. The 3 stages of making a hose are the raw process, where they mix the hoses. They have the extrusion process, and then they have the cure vulcanization process. The first step is making the raw rubber, or the slab stock. And what they do there is they just take a bunch of chemicals and they pour it into kind of like a big mixing bowl, like you would make dough or bread or cakes or anything. They pour those in there, then they just stir them up, they run them through an extruder, and they extrude them out. The chemicals vary, the specific chemicals vary a lot, but they have certain categories that they use. You need carbon black, you need a vulcanizing agent, and you need an accelerating agent. And then they also just have some certain filler chemicals just to give the rubber a different consistency, or just to fill in the blanks between, to grab onto the different polymers, because some polymers don't necessarily bond with others. The second step to making a hose is the extrusion process. In the book Extrusion by Sigurd Claus, they talk about the first patent that was made for an extruder. It was in 1797, and this guy, all he wanted to do was make a lead pipe, or a certain kind of metal pipe, but specifically he wanted lead at the time, and he wanted to make a pipe that was very, very long as he could get it, without any kinks or without any attachments or anything like that onto the pipe. He just wanted to make a long, straight pipe. And so an extruder is basically just a machine that pushes a material out, and that's really all it is. It's kind of in the name. Specifically for rubber, the rubber is fed into the back of the extruder, and then a screw kind of grabs the rubber and pushes it through the extruder. The rubber, as it's going through there, it gets heat from the extruder. The extruder is set to certain temperatures, and so it heats up the rubber as it goes. And then another big source of the heat is the friction of the rubber being pushed along the barrel and along the screw. At the front of the extruder, they have tooling. They have a die and a pin, and so the extruder is, you put the raw material in, you push it along through the extruder, and it comes out the front. And as it comes out the front, it goes over something called a pin, which is just an attachment to the front of the extruder, and that'll be the diameter of the inside of the hose. So if your pin's about a 1.5 inch diameter, so the hose is going to come out of there, and it's going to be about 1.5 inches on the inner diameter. And then on top of that, they have a die, which is just another piece of metal with a hole drilled in it. And so that goes over, and so the rubber comes out through there, and it goes over the pin and out through the die. And that little space there makes the hose hollow. So then it just goes around, and it's spun onto pans, and there could be 100 foot on a pan if it's 4-inch hose, or there could be as much as 2,500 foot on a pan if it's a 1/4 inch hose. So the final step of making a hose is the cure or vulcanization process. So after the hose is extruded and put onto pans, they take those and then they cut that, however many foot it is, they cut it into different lengths and different pieces. And so then those pieces are put onto a metal, just a piece of metal that's in the shape of the final shape of the hose. So if you want an L-shaped hose, then you're going to have a piece of metal called a mandrel that is in an L shape, and the hose will just slide over it. Then the hose goes into a vulcanizer, which is it's kind of like a cup, I guess, right? It'll be just a cylinder. So the mandrel goes into there, and inside there's just a bunch of pressure and heat. So they just pump a bunch of pressure, gets up to like 200 pounds per square inch, and it gets to about 350 degrees. After it comes out, it is hard and it keeps its shape. So after the hose comes, because before it's raw rubber is very malleable and you can move it and do different things with it. But after it gets into that process and pumped with the heat and the pressure, it comes out and it's very, very hard. And you can bend it and do whatever you want, but it'll go back to that L shape. Main ingredient, or one of the main ingredients to help rubber cure or to get hard is sulfur. And the book Science and Technology of Rubber, chapter 7, A.Y. Curing, it says the first instance of rubber, they used 8 parts of sulfur to every 100 parts of rubber. And it took about 5 hours to cure at 160 degrees. Now, over time and through different technology, and they use different chemicals to accelerate the curing process, they've gotten that time down to 3 or 4 minutes. So we started out at 5 hours for the very first, and now we can do it in 3 or 4 minutes. After the hose is cured in the vulcanizer, it comes out, and that's pretty much the finished product. They usually trim a little off the ends to make it in the exact size that it needs to be, or they'll put some wraps or prints on it or something like that to just finish it up, and then they box it up and ship it out. So rubber hoses are made by mixing rubber, different chemicals. They mix up the rubber, then they extrude that rubber, and then they cure that rubber. So I don't know if anybody has bought a hose. I'm 26 years old, and I've personally never bought a hose in my life. But for some reason, we're making 60,000 of these hoses a day, and I'm making 5 miles, but I don't know where they're going. And so that's how rubber is made. I hope it's informative. I hope you learned something. I hope you had fun and enjoyed it. Thanks.